Good evening, everybody. You might have noticed that UKIP's been in the news a bit over the course of the last few days. It started with the posters, and then we saw some opinion poll ratings. And you also might have noticed that virtually the entire political class have decided to come together with their friends in the media and to be as vile and nasty about us as they can possibly be. And I got a letter last week from a UKIP member down in the south of England. He's 92 years old, and he served in Bomber Command during World War II. He said, Nigel, the reason you're receiving flak is you're getting near the target. He was absolutely right, because actually all we're doing is we're articulating the concerns that are held by the vast majority of the British people. We've just about had enough of a career class of politician. What I mean by that is, we're run now, look at the three so-called big parties. Mind you, the Lib Dems don't really qualify anymore. But if you look at the three so-called big parties, and look at their front benches, they're made up of people who go to the same handful of schools. They all go to Oxford, they all get a degree in PPE, well, okay, fine, but then they all get a job as a researcher in a political office. They become members of Parliament aged 27 or 28, cabinet ministers in their early 40s, and I put it to you that this country is now run by a bunch of college kids who've never done a proper day's work in their lives. Apparently, we are extremists, cranks, fruitcakes. I didn't know there were so many very odd people living in this great county of Cambridgeshire. Thank you for coming along this evening. Oh no, we're extreme, all right. Oh yes, we're so extreme that we believe, I mean, it's difficult this, but we actually believe as a party that the best people to govern Britain are the British people themselves, and we should do so through the ballot box and do it as opposed to being governed by an unelected bureaucracy based in Brussels. Let's have a drink of that. We're so extreme that we think that having a total open door to 485 million people, all of whom can come to this country, get jobs, use the National Health Service, use the primary school system, get unemployment benefit, get child benefit, even if the kids have never left Warsaw. Well, you know, that's what happens. And we're so extreme. We are so extreme that we think what Britain ought to do is what virtually every other country in the world does. We ought to decide ourselves who comes to live, work and settle in this country, and we do not find the annual inflow into Britain of 4,000 long-term migrants from the European Union every week. We do not find that acceptable at a time when youth unemployment has doubled in 10 years and when the take-home pay of many people has been compressed. So they're taking home less money than they were 10 years ago, but the gas bill has gone through the roof. We believe we should control immigration. We should do it for working people. We should do it for the cohesion of our communities. And above all, we believe we should control immigration because it's about time the British government fulfilled its primary duty and put the interests of ordinary men, women and children in this country first. About it, there's nothing extreme at all in the UKIP proposition. Now, it's been a remarkable few weeks, and in many ways, there's one man that stands out for me. There's one man who has done more to promote UKIP, has done more to promote the anti-EU cause than anybody else in this country. It could be our lead candidate, Patrick O'Flynn, in the east of England, and his team of candidates, who are doing a great job. But it's not him. It could be Paul Sykes, who very generously has given us time and money and much of the inspiration behind the brilliant poster campaign, the first bit of which you've seen, the second bit of which will be launched on Monday next week. It could be Paul, with his generosity and commitment to our cause, that is the man that has transformed British politics. But I'm afraid it's not him either. No, one man. One man. Some of you are getting there, aren't you? There's one man to whom this cause, our party, and my career owe virtually everything. He decided that it would be a terribly good idea if, for the first time in 40 years, we had the opportunity on national television in this country to debate what the European Union was really all about, and whether Britain should remain a member or not. No, Nick's done us a huge favour. He went into those debates believing that he would expose the UKIP argument. He went into those debates thinking that his trump card was the same trump card when it comes to EU membership that is used by Ed Miliband. That's, of course, if he ever even talks about Europe. Because the first Labour Party political broadcast was 4 minutes and 40 of an EU-free zone. So he's clearly rather scared, isn't he? It's the same line that Mr Cameron comes out with. It's the same line that Chris Patten comes out with. It's the same line that Lord Mandelson comes out with. Do we have some audience participation when I say that? Right, that's better. Thank you. Thank you. You were all asleep for a moment there. It's the same line they trot out year after year. Rather than engaging in debate, they say that unless we're members of the European Union, 3.5 million British people will lose their jobs. Because all trade will cease between Britain and our European partners, friends, whatever you may wish to call them. Now, the very fact that people like Cleggers actually believe this shows you they've never lived or worked in the real world. There is no single other part of the world in which trade between companies and consumers is dependent upon membership of political union. And just look at the figures. Okay, Europe is an important market for us. We sell about 40% of our overseas goods to our European neighbours, which, if you think about it, isn't terribly surprising. Although the amount of goods we sell them every year decreases as the rest of the world grows. So yes, it's an important market. We sell them roughly £100 billion worth of goods every single year. But they sell us £150 billion worth of goods every year. You know, the idea that Honda won't be able to sell cars in Europe made in Swindon is given light to the fact, you know, how many Mercedes have you seen today on the roads? Or BMWs? Or Audis? You know, we buy a lot of their cars. Would you believe that per capita we are the biggest champagne drinkers in the world? I've been doing my bit for that, I can tell you. The French sell us 20 million bottles of champagne every year. They're going to want to go on, aren't they? Selling us 20 million bottles of champagne every year.
If you win.
And here's the killer. If I win, it'll be 25 million bottles. But here's the killer fact. The United Kingdom is now the Eurozone's biggest export market in the world. They sell more to us than they sell to the States, or to China, or to Japan. And given how badly the Eurozone is doing, And given how high levels of unemployment are, it's in their interests, more than our interests, to negotiate a free trade deal, what used to be called 40 years ago, if you remember, a common market. It's in their interest to do it even more than ours. And Lord Digby-Jones, the former president of the CBI, has said he reckons a free trade deal could be renegotiated with the European Union within 24 hours because the German car industry would demand it. Business and trade isn't created by politicians, it's created by consumers. You know, China sells a huge amount of product into this country without being a member of the European Union, which really rather proves the point. In the real world, the customer is king. It's the customer that holds the whip hand in any negotiation, and we clearly are the customer. Well, Clegg and I argued that out, and he thought his bombshell would sink UKIP and sink the Eurosceptic campaign, but people with good common sense thinking understood that, frankly, any threat would be greater to France and Germany than it would be to this country, and therefore it doesn't exist. But it goes further than that. Because there was one moment in those debates when Nick said, and by the way, I made carefully sure that at no point in those two debates did I say, I agree with Nick. There wasn't much possibility of that, was there? But there was a moment in that first debate, and Nick said, unless you're part of a big trading bloc, you cannot negotiate your own trade deals with other parts of the world. And I listened to this. And I turned to look at Nick, and he steadfastly held on to the left leg. I don't think he made eye contact with me for the first hour of those debates. And I said, Nick, did you know that last March, Iceland, who've got a population of 320,000, negotiated their own free trade agreement with China? I'm damn certain that if Iceland can negotiate their own trade deals, a country that speaks English with 64 million people is more than capable of being able to look after its own global trade affairs. And look, far from being little Englanders, actually, we think the European Union is too small. It is a declining part of the world. Every year, its share of global GDP decreases. And we must be mad. There's a fantastic opportunity out there. Because we'll do our free trade deal with our next door neighbours in Europe, but there is a group of countries out there formed together in an association. They have over 2 billion people that live within them. They speak English. They share common law. In many cases, they have similar contract law. They actually like us. And I bet there's not a man or woman in this room that doesn't have a relative or a friend or a neighbour that lives in one of those countries. And the sooner we're free from this cloying European Union and able to negotiate our own position on the world stage, it'll be time to re-engage the Commonwealth countries who we should never... Now, there are lots of arguments. We can talk about trade. We can talk about the fact that we have to pay £55 million a day to be a member of an organisation whose accounts have not been signed off for the last 18 years in a row. We can talk about that.
The mafia.
We can talk about the... That's a very extreme comment. Not the mafia, it's organised crime. There are lots of things we can talk about. And there are many that have argued that if we stayed a part of this union, we'd lose control of our country. If we stayed a part of this union, we'd lose control of our borders. And at every stage when we said these things, we've been told, no, we're scaremongering, it's wrong. But I think the penny has dropped with the great British public. And the one issue that it is going to decide who wins these European elections is the simple issue that as members of the European Union, we have taken down our borders to 485 million people, and that it's utterly meaningless for Miliband or for Dave, as I think he likes to be called now. It's utterly meaningless for them to set targets when we don't have control over our borders. And if you look at how badly things are going wrong in Greece, Italy, Spain and Portugal, countries that made the horrendous error of joining the euro, and thank goodness we didn't listen to Heseltine, Blair and Lord Mandelson. Come on. And we kept the pound. But they joined the euro, they're now in real trouble. Youth unemployment in some of those countries is approaching 60%. We have the onset of deflation, a disease that in some ways is more difficult to cure than inflation. And my great fear is that we may well be on the verge of the biggest migratory wave to come to this country ever. It may well dwarf what we've seen already, and there's nothing that we can do about it. Now let me make this clear. We are not against Europe. We're against the European Union. We love Europe. We love the peoples of Europe. We love the cultures in Europe, the different languages, the different wines and cheeses. Europe is a fascinating, diverse, amazing continent. And provided that Europe has democratic nation states, they will not go to war with each other. So I want, actually, not just for the United Kingdom to leave the European Union, I want Europe to leave the European Union. Let's get rid of that ridiculous flag. Let's not have to stand up for that anthem. And let's also get rid of that president whose name no one knows. We don't want it, and nor does anybody else in Europe want it. But equally, I think it's very, very important to make this point. We've been accused of lots of things in the last few weeks. We've been accused of scapegoating. Let me make this clear. If I was a 21-year-old man living in Romania, I would come to this country. And I would come to this country because the minimum wage is 9 times what it is in Romania. And I would save a few quid, work here for a few years, go back to Romania, and actually in many ways be set up financially for life. We are not scapegoating people from Europe who want to make better lives for themselves. What we're saying is, actually, this country isn't a charity, it's a national health service, and it's time we put the interests of our own people first. But we are scapegoating, and we are blaming 3 political parties in Britain who've taken down our borders, opened us up to mass immigration without ever giving us a say. In my view, that can win it for us, and I can tell you, this is the last day of a 2-week tour. I've been all over England and Wales in the last 2 weeks, and you know, it's rather like if I'm served roast pork, I always take the crackling off and put it on the edge, because I want to save the best till last. Party's achievements in this part of the world have been spectacular. You know, Peter Reid and Lisa Duffy down in Ramsey, which is now a UKIP-controlled town. It's had a UKIP mayor. We bust through in a big way. onto the county council last year, and we've shaken up the whole form of government there, which is very much to the good, in my view, and was a big push in Huntingdonshire Council this year, where I'm absolutely confident that the 5 members we have that sit on that district council will increase markedly on May the 22nd. So things are happening here. And I have every reason to believe we'll top the European polls here. And I have every reason to believe that we'll build a base that will leave us in a very powerful position for the general election next year. So there's an awful lot happening and going on here. It's a very exciting place for UKIP. Now, can I ask, in this room, could those of you who are not members of UKIP put your hands up? About half. Right, would you lock that door over there? And that one over there? I want to say this to you, to all of you that have come along tonight. Welcome to a public meeting. We're the only party that now does public meetings. And whether you come along tonight because you like Nigel and you like UKIP, whether you come along tonight because you're open-minded and curious, whether you come along tonight because you want to remove all doubt and leave here knowing that you absolutely despise me. For whichever reason you come, you're welcome. You're very welcome. But if you leave here tonight and you agree with what you've heard and you're satisfied with the questions that we've answered and you believe that we are trying actually to take back our country, to take back control of our borders, to hand on to our children and grandchildren the very liberties and freedoms that those that went before us fought in 2 world wars to defend and hand on to us. Believe we're doing the right thing, then please don't go home and tomorrow night shout at the television. Commit to actually doing something. And you can all do something. You can join us. You can give us a couple of bob. You can take some leaflets. You can take a poster. You can bore your family and friends into submission. I've been doing it for years. There is so much you can do. We are, and honestly, I believe we are 3 weeks away from what could and should be an earthquake in British politics. Something that will fundamentally change the shape of politics in Britain and to do so for the good. But we can't do it on our own. And we're not going to get much support from the big media. Well, it's very good to see Simon on the platform this evening. And we're very and we can't expect too many favours from the BBC or any other broadcaster either. So it's us. It's us. It's us. It's the people versus the political class. And so I have a question that I want to ask all of you in this room. Are you prepared to join our people's army that will topple the establishment on May the 22nd? Yeah. Nigel Farage, MEP.